Welcome to this special audiobook. You are about to listen to a mystery story called The Wrong Anniversary Flowers by Amjad. This story is told in very simple and easy English. If you can understand this story from beginning to end, that means your English is already 50% good. Yes, you heard me right. And if you stay with me till the end and understand everything, then, my friend, your English is 75% good or more. So let's enjoy the story and learn at the same time. Ready? Let's begin. Emma stood at the door with a small smile. The flower delivery man handed her a beautiful bouquet. "Happy anniversary," he said. Emma took the flowers and looked at the card. "To my beautiful wife, love always, Daniel." She smiled, but only for a second. Then she looked down at the flowers. They were red roses. Again. For the 12th year in a row. Emma walked into the kitchen and put the flowers in a glass vase. She sat at the table and stared at them. 12 years. 12 anniversaries. And every single time, red roses. But she had told her husband many times she loves yellow roses. Yellow is her favorite color. Yellow makes her feel calm and happy. She even reminded him last year, "I love yellow roses, Daniel. Just yellow, but still today red." It didn't make sense. Daniel was not a forgetful man. He remembered birthdays, meetings, shopping lists. He always noticed small things. So why this? Emma looked at the flowers again. Suddenly, a strange thought came into her mind. A soft voice inside whispered, "Maybe this is not a mistake." Emma sat quietly in the kitchen. The red roses stood tall in the vase on the table. They looked fresh and beautiful, but Emma didn't feel happy. She felt confused. And more than that, she felt a little scared. For 12 years, her husband had sent her red roses on their anniversary. But she had always told him that her favorite color was yellow. Yellow roses meant joy, friendship, and hope. Red roses were for love. Yes, but they were not her favorite. Not even close. She tried to think of a reason. Maybe Daniel forgot, but every single year. That didn't seem right. Daniel was not forgetful. He was careful. He made plans. He paid attention to little things. He always remembered what she liked, her favorite coffee, the way she liked her sandwich, even the songs she listened to when she felt sad. So how could he get something as simple as her favorite flower wrong every single year? Emma decided to ask him that night. When Daniel came home from work, she smiled and said thank you for the flowers. He kissed her on the cheek and looked happy. They had dinner together. Nothing felt strange. But when they were sitting on the couch later, she spoke gently. "Daniel," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," he replied. "Why do you always send red roses for our anniversary?" Daniel laughed a little. "Because red means love. It's romantic." Emma nodded slowly. "Yes, but I've told you before. I like yellow roses. They're my favorite. Daniel smiled. I know, but red is for passion, right? And it's a special day. So I thought red would be better. Emma didn't know what to say. His answer sounded sweet, but something still felt strange. Her heart didn't feel relaxed. It felt tight, like a small knot in her chest. She nodded and tried to smile, but her thoughts were not calm. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the flowers, about all the years she received them. She remembered one time, 5 years ago, when she got a small rash on her hand after touching the petals. At that time, she thought it was just her skin being sensitive. It went away in a few days. She had forgotten all about it. Now that memory came back, and it stayed. The next morning, Emma made a decision. She would go to the flower shop where the flowers came from. Maybe the florist made a mistake. Maybe Daniel asked for yellow and they gave red. It was possible. She wanted to find out. She got ready and drove to the shop. It was a small place at the corner of a quiet street. The sign outside said, "Sweet petals, flowers for every heart." She walked inside. The smell of fresh flowers filled the air. A woman stood behind the counter, arranging a bouquet. "Hello," Emma said softly. "I have a question about some flowers." The woman smiled kindly. "Of course. How can I help you?" "My name is Emma," she said. "Yesterday, I got flowers delivered from here. It was for my anniversary. I get them every year. They're always red roses." The woman nodded. "Yes, I remember. We've been delivering them for many years." Emma continued, "I just wanted to know, do you ever check the order before sending? I mean, maybe my husband asked for yellow, but red was sent by mistake." The woman's smile faded a little. She looked thoughtful. "Actually," she said, "your husband always orders yellow roses. Every year. Same order. Yellow roses. He's very clear about it." Emma felt her heart drop. Her face became pale. "Are you sure?" she asked. The woman nodded. "Yes, we have it in the system. I can even show you the receipts." She turned to the computer and typed something. After a few moments, she printed some papers and gave them to Emma. Emma looked at the papers. Her husband's name, the date, the message on the card, and right next to it, the order, 1 dozen yellow roses, every year. Yellow. Emma was silent. Her hands felt cold. Her mind was racing. "But I always get red," she whispered. The florist looked at her for a moment, then said something that made Emma's stomach turn. "We changed the flowers," she said quietly. "We don't send yellow roses to your house anymore." Emma stared at her, confused and frightened. "Why?" she asked. The woman spoke slowly. "Because yellow roses are dangerous for you. They contain a small amount of a chemical that causes skin allergies and other issues. We found out a few years ago. You once called to complain about a rash. Remember? Emma slowly nodded. The florist continued. We checked the type of yellow roses your husband ordered. They were not safe for sensitive skin. So since then, we've been replacing them with red ones, just to protect you. We thought you knew. Emma felt like the room was spinning. She sat down on a chair nearby. Her husband knew she had sensitive skin. He knew about that rash. He saw it with his own eyes. Then why did he keep ordering the same yellow roses? Every year? The woman behind the counter didn't say more. But inside Emma's mind, one question grew louder and louder. Was Daniel trying to hurt her? Emma sat in the flower shop, holding the receipts in her hands. The florist went back to arranging flowers, giving her space, but Emma's mind was no longer in the room. Her thoughts were heavy and fast. Her heartbeat was loud. Each word from the florist kept repeating in her head. Your husband always orders yellow roses. We change them because they can be harmful to you. We thought you knew. Emma had never known. She had never been told. She always believed her husband just forgot or thought red was more romantic. But the truth was something completely different. He knew she liked yellow. He ordered yellow. But the shop had been secretly protecting her by changing the flowers. That meant Daniel had never made a mistake. He had sent exactly what she asked for. The wrong flowers were not a sign of forgetfulness. They were a sign of something much darker. Emma stood up slowly and thanked the florist. She left the shop without buying anything. As she stepped outside, the cold wind touched her face. Her legs felt weak, and her hands shook a little as she opened her car door. She sat in the driver's seat, but she didn't start the engine. She just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, her mind full of questions. Why would Daniel keep sending her the same harmful flowers? Why didn't he stop after she got sick the first time? Why did he pretend everything was fine? She remembered other strange things now. Moments she had ignored at the time. A few years ago, she had chest pain that the doctors could not explain. She had also suffered from tiredness and weakness that came and went without warning. There were days when she felt dizzy for no reason. Sometimes her skin would turn red in small patches. She had always thought maybe it was stress or her age or just a bad diet, but now she wasn't sure. She started the car and drove home. Her mind was still cloudy, but one thought was becoming clearer and clearer. What if Daniel had been trying to hurt her for years? She didn't want to believe that. Daniel was her husband. He had always been kind. They had good memories. He made her laugh. He helped around the house. He brought her tea when she was sick. He was gentle. But then again, maybe that was all a mask. Emma arrived home. She opened the door slowly, looking around like the house was no longer hers. The red roses were still sitting on the kitchen table. Bright, fresh, and innocent looking. She sat down in front of them and looked at each petal. They were beautiful, but now she couldn't see them the same way. She took out her phone and opened the browser. She searched for the name of the yellow roses the florist had mentioned earlier, the same kind Daniel ordered. It didn't take long to find information. The articles were clear. That type of yellow rose contained a substance that was toxic to some people. Repeated exposure could cause allergies, skin reactions, and if touched often, even problems with the nervous system. In some rare cases, it could be life-threatening. Emma closed her eyes. She felt cold. 12 years of those flowers. Once a year. Each time touching them, smelling them, and even sleeping in the same room with them. And every time, something small had happened to her body. A rash, a headache, tiredness. All things that seemed normal but maybe weren't. She tried to calm herself down. Maybe Daniel didn't know. Maybe he just didn't believe in allergies. Maybe he thought it wasn't serious. But then she remembered the year she had gone to the hospital. She had chest pain and breathing trouble. The doctors couldn't find the cause, but Daniel had been very quiet that night. He stayed by her side, but he didn't say much. When she got better, he never asked about it again. Emma now felt a mix of fear and anger. How could someone love her and still do this? She went to Daniel's office in their home. He kept papers there, old receipts, bills, and letters. She looked around carefully. In one drawer, she found a small folder. Inside were flower order forms. One for every year. And just like the florist had said, they were all the same. 1 dozen yellow roses. There was no mistake. No accident. He had done it on purpose. Emma sat on the floor of the office, holding the papers. Her hands were shaking again. Her heart was beating faster than before. She now had proof. But proof of what? That her husband didn't care about her safety? Or something even worse? Was this just a careless act? Or had he really been trying to poison her? Slowly, without anyone noticing, the answer was still not clear. But her fear was real. She could no longer ignore it. She had to know the truth. And she had to be careful. Very careful. That night, Emma did not sleep. She stayed awake in bed, her eyes open in the darkness, her thoughts racing. Daniel was sleeping beside her, his breathing soft and steady. Everything about him seemed calm and peaceful. But to Emma, his calmness now felt dangerous. She stared at the ceiling, asking herself again and again, why would a man send poisonous flowers to his own wife year after year? What did he want? What was he trying to do? In the morning, Emma acted normal. She made coffee, gave Daniel a light smile, and said good morning like she always did. She watched him carefully. She watched the way he looked at her, the way he moved, the way he spoke. He didn't look guilty. He didn't act strange. He looked just like the Daniel she had always known. Kind, loving, polite. But now she knew that the surface could hide a lot. After breakfast, Daniel left for work. Emma waited until his car disappeared down the street, then quickly went back to his office. She had to learn more. She had to find out if he had ever said or written anything suspicious. She opened his laptop. It needed a password. She tried a few guesses. His birthday, their wedding date, their dog's name. None of them worked. Finally, she tried her own name. That worked. She felt a chill. He had used her name as the password. Why? Was it just sweet? Or was he watching her more closely than she thought? Inside the laptop, she found mostly work files. Emails about meetings, reports, financial spreadsheets. All looked normal. But then she found a folder deep in the system. It had no name, just a date from 2 years ago. She opened it. Inside were photos. Pictures of Emma. Some were of her sitting in the garden. Some were of her sleeping. Some were from the hospital visit a few years ago. Pictures of her lying in bed wearing an oxygen mask. Emma's heart beat faster. Why had he saved these pictures? She scrolled through them. They were all carefully taken, almost like a record, as if someone was collecting proof. Watching her health, she opened another file. It was a text file full of small notes. Skin rash observed mild, day 2 after delivery. Red patches on arms. Day 4. Said she thought it was a soap reaction. Dizziness reported day 6. Each note had a date. Each note was about her symptoms. Emma stared at the screen. Her hands started shaking. This was not normal. This was not love. This was not forgetfulness. This was someone writing a medical diary. Someone watching her body react to something. Someone trying to study what would happen next. And the worst part? The notes stopped after each anniversary. Then they would start again the next year. It was always after she received the flowers. She closed the laptop slowly, her breath coming quicker now. This was not just about the wrong color roses. This was something much more dangerous. Daniel had been watching her like an experiment. Quietly, secretly, without her knowledge. Emma stepped away from the desk and sat down. Her whole body felt heavy. Her mind was spinning. She remembered how Daniel always made sure she was the one to arrange the flowers in the vase. He would watch as she cut the stems. He would smile and say, "They look perfect when you touch them." At the time, it had sounded sweet. Now it sounded like something else. He wanted her to touch them. He wanted her to breathe them in. He wanted her to get sick, but not quickly, slowly. Over time, it would never be clear. No one would suspect the flowers. She would just appear weak. Maybe one day she would stop waking up, and no one would know why. Emma stood up and looked around the room. Everything suddenly felt unsafe. She had to protect herself. But she had to be careful. If Daniel found out she knew, what would he do? She picked up the flower order receipts again and placed them in her bag. She also copied the laptop files to a USB stick she found on his desk. She didn't know what to do with them yet, but she needed proof. Real proof. That evening, when Daniel came home, Emma smiled. She asked him about his day. She laughed at his jokes. She served him his favorite dinner. She was quiet, but she watched him. He looked at her and said, "You seem tired. Are you feeling okay?" She nodded. "Just a little sleepy." And he smiled. That smile stayed in her mind for a long time after. The next few days were difficult for Emma. She had to pretend everything was normal, even though nothing felt normal anymore. She smiled when Daniel talked. She laughed when he told jokes. She kissed him goodbye when he went to work. But inside, she was filled with fear, confusion, and sadness. She kept thinking about all the small things from the past 12 years. Times when she had felt dizzy, or tired, or had strange skin rashes. She had always blamed it on stress or weather or maybe bad food. But now, after finding the diary of symptoms on Daniel's laptop, everything looked different. Emma knew one thing clearly now. This was not an accident. This was not about forgetting flower colors. This was planned. It had been happening slowly year after year. And Daniel had been watching every reaction carefully. It was not love. It was something dark, something dangerous. But the question that kept her awake every night was, why? Why would Daniel, the man she trusted, the man she married, want to hurt her? She tried to remember any moment, any fight, any secret, but there was nothing serious. They had disagreements, of course, like all couples, but never anything big enough to cause this kind of hate. Then one day, Emma decided to visit her friend Rachel. Rachel was one of her oldest friends, and she also worked as a nurse in a hospital. Emma didn't tell her the full story. Not yet. She simply asked a question. Is there any flower that can make someone sick if they touch it or breathe it too much? Rachel looked surprised. Yes, of course. There are many plants that are toxic. Why? Emma smiled nervously. Just curious. Like, for example, what about lilies? Rachel nodded. Lilies can be dangerous, especially to cats, but also to people with allergies. Some types can cause breathing problems or skin issues if touched. Why are you asking? Emma shook her head. No reason, just something I read. Rachel watched her closely, but didn't push further. That night, Emma searched online about toxic flowers. She found that many types of flowers can be harmful. Some cause small symptoms like itching or coughing. Others can be deadly if touched regularly over time. One type stood out, oleander. It looked beautiful, came in many colors, but was highly poisonous. Even a small amount, if touched or inhaled often, could affect the heart, skin, and lungs. Emma thought back. The roses Daniel had sent her every year weren't actually normal roses. They looked slightly different, almost like wild roses. Once, a florist had called them special garden roses. What if they weren't roses at all? What if they were oleander flowers made to look like roses? The next morning, Emma returned to the same florist who had given her the receipts. This time, she brought a picture of last year's anniversary bouquet. She had taken the photo for her Instagram, thinking the flowers looked unique. She showed the florist. "Do you remember these?" The florist stared at the photo and frowned. "These are not the ones your husband ordered. These are oleanders. They're not safe for gifts. I've seen these before in gardens, but never in our store." Emma felt cold inside. She took a deep breath and asked, "Can someone easily confuse them with roses?" The florist shook her head. "Only if someone wants to hide something. They're not the same. These are not meant to be in a bouquet. Especially not for a home." Emma left the shop feeling sick. Now she had more proof. The flowers were poisonous. They were never roses. And Daniel had sent them again and again. But how was he getting them? If the florist didn't supply them, then where were they coming from? She had an idea. When she got home, she went straight to the small garden behind their house. Daniel often spent time there. He liked gardening. He always said it helped him relax. Emma had never paid much attention. She would sit on the porch while he dug the soil, watered the plants, and trimmed the leaves. Now she looked at the garden with new eyes. She walked carefully, looking at each plant. Roses, lavender, some vegetables. Then, in the corner, half hidden by tall bushes, she saw a group of flowers she had never noticed before. They looked just like the ones from the photo. She bent down and touched one leaf lightly. Then she took out her phone and searched the plant by image. Oleander. Her heart dropped. Daniel had been growing them himself, right in their backyard. Then picking them, arranging them, and sending them through another flower box, so it looked like a gift from a shop. He had planned everything. Emma stood there for a long time, staring at the poisonous plants growing quietly behind her house. She could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on her chest. She couldn't pretend anymore. She was living with someone who wanted to harm her, and he was doing it in a way that no one else could see. She had to decide what to do next. But whatever she chose, she had to be very, very careful. Emma did not sleep that night. She kept thinking again and again about the oleander plants growing in her garden. She had always believed her backyard was a peaceful space, a place for morning coffee, weekend reading, and evening talks. But now she knew that behind that peaceful picture, something very dangerous was hiding. And the most shocking part was that the danger was planted there by her own husband. She lay in bed beside Daniel, who was sleeping peacefully. His face looked calm and innocent. But now, Emma saw something different. She saw the lies behind that calm face. She saw the plans he had been making for years. Quiet plans. Slow plans. plans to hurt her, maybe even kill her. And the more she thought about it, the more confused and scared she became. Emma had many questions. Why was he doing this? Did he hate her? Was he angry about something she didn't know? Or was this something darker inside him? Something she had never seen? She wanted to ask him directly, but she knew she couldn't. It was too dangerous. If she asked him now, he might lie. Or worse, he might stop pretending and do something sudden. So, Emma decided to stay silent, but not still. She needed a plan of her own. The next morning, Emma acted like everything was fine. She made breakfast as usual. She packed Daniel's lunch. She smiled and kissed him goodbye at the door. But inside, she had already started a new mission. She needed to collect proof, real, strong proof. She took out her phone and carefully took pictures of the flowers in the backyard. She took pictures of the leaves, the petals, and the way the plants were hidden. Then she searched online to find out more about oleander poisoning. She learned that all parts of the plant are dangerous. Flowers, leaves, even the sap. She learned that touching it every day could cause slow damage to the heart and skin. Breathing the pollen for a long time could make someone tired, dizzy, and sick. Emma remembered the symptoms she had written about on her phone. Shortness of breath, skin rashes, weak heartbeat, confusion, dry mouth, stomach pain, all of them matched. It was as if Daniel had studied the effects before he started using the flowers. That thought made her feel cold. She also began keeping a secret diary, just like Daniel's. But in her diary, she wrote down everything she found. Dates, photos, names of flowers, symptoms, and places. She kept it all saved in a folder on a pen drive, hidden in her purse. Then Emma made one more brave move. She visited a private doctor. Not someone she and Daniel had visited before, but a new one. She told the doctor about her strange symptoms and showed the pictures of the plants. The doctor looked surprised and serious. He told her she had likely been in contact with a poisonous plant for a long time. He didn't ask too many personal questions, but he gave her blood tests and skin tests. He also told her to avoid the plant immediately and to be careful with anything from her garden. Emma knew she couldn't just stop accepting the flowers from Daniel. That would raise suspicion. So she made a new plan. Every time Daniel gave her flowers, she would wear gloves and put them in a plastic box, not in water. Then later, when he wasn't home, she would throw them away in a public garbage bin far from the house. She kept acting like everything was normal. They went out to dinner, visited friends, even watched a movie at home. But inside, Emma was watching everything carefully. Every move Daniel made, every word he said. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. Emma found a small hidden key inside one of Daniel's old jackets. It had fallen to the floor when she was doing laundry. She looked at it closely. It didn't look like any key she had seen before. It was small and silver, and it looked like a key for a drawer or a locker. Her heart started beating fast. She knew she had seen Daniel using the small cabinet in the garage. the one he kept locked. He always said it was for tools and wires, and she had never asked questions. But now, she thought the key might be for that. That night, when Daniel was asleep, she quietly walked to the garage with the key. She unlocked the cabinet. Inside, she found a small notebook, a sealed box, and a few brown bottles with warning signs. She opened the notebook and started reading. Inside were notes in Daniel's handwriting. Notes about dates, symptoms, flower types, reactions, and doses. He had even written down the first time Emma had a rash, the first time she fainted, and the time she visited the doctor. There were entries like, reduce number of flowers next year to slow down process, and too much reaction in year 7. Adjust for year 8. Emma closed the book. Her hands were shaking. She opened the box and found dried flower petals, stored samples, and a few sealed envelopes marked with years. One envelope had her name written on it. She didn't open it. Not yet. She put everything back the way she found it. She locked the cabinet again. She had found the proof she needed. But now the truth was clear. Daniel was not just trying to hurt her. He had a full plan. He had written it down like a science project. Every detail was there. Emma was not safe anymore. She had to act fast. And carefully. She couldn't trust anyone. And she couldn't wait too long. Emma was overwhelmed, but she knew she could not waste time. She had found enough proof to know that Daniel had been planning something terrible for years. But now she had to figure out how to escape. She couldn't confront him yet, not without a plan. If she tried to talk to him now, it could end badly. He might realize she knew too much and take action to stop her. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, Emma spent hours making a careful plan. She couldn't just leave the house or run away without thinking it through. She needed a strategy. The first thing she decided was that she would gather everything she needed in secret. She would pack a bag with clothes, personal items, and important documents, but she had to do it without Daniel noticing. He was always watching, always asking questions. If he saw her acting differently, it would raise suspicion. She also knew she couldn't go to the police just yet. There was no clear evidence of a crime. What could she say? That her husband had been poisoning her slowly over the years? It would sound crazy to anyone who didn't know the whole story. She needed more proof, something undeniable. So, Emma made a decision. She would leave the house quietly, but she needed to be smart about it. Her plan was to leave while Daniel was at work the next day. She would go to a trusted friend's house first, someone who wouldn't question her, someone who could help her without asking too many questions. Then, from there, she would figure out her next step. But before all of this, Emma knew she had to gather the rest of the evidence. The envelope she had found in the cabinet, the one with her name written on it, had to hold something important. It could be the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that would prove Daniel's intentions beyond any doubt. She had to open it. But she had to be careful. That evening, as Daniel watched TV in the living room, Emma took the envelope out of the box in the garage. She held it for a long time, her heart racing. She knew whatever was inside would change everything. She carefully opened the envelope, trying not to make any noise. Inside, she found more papers, documents, pictures, and even a few medical receipts. There were letters from doctors and some handwritten notes, all written by Daniel. The documents were chilling. One of the letters was from a private medical center. It talked about Emma's health and listed the medications she had been prescribed over the years. There were instructions to avoid certain types of plants and flowers, as they could interfere with her treatment. The note was signed by a doctor Emma didn't recognize. The more she read, the more she realized that Daniel had been going behind her back to get these letters. He had been in contact with the medical center, possibly working with the doctors to make sure she never realized what was happening to her. There were also more details about the flowers. Daniel had kept track of the types of plants he gave her, the number of flowers in each bouquet, and how many days it took for her to show signs of illness. He had even written down her reactions, how long it took for her to feel dizzy, how many times she had to visit the doctor, and which symptoms were the most severe. It was clear that Daniel had been using the flowers to make her weaker, slowly. But the most frightening thing Emma found was a letter to a third party. It was addressed to someone named Dr. Thomas, a toxicologist. The letter explained Daniel's plan. He had written about how he had been using the oleander flowers on Emma for years, testing different amounts to see how her body reacted. The letter ended with a request for advice on how to make the process more efficient. Emma felt sick to her stomach. This was not a mistake. This wasn't about forgetting flower colors or simple accidents. This was cold, calculated manipulation. Daniel had been poisoning her, and he had been doing it on purpose. She put the papers back in the envelope, her hands trembling. She knew she couldn't stay in the house any longer. She needed to leave, but she couldn't just run away without leaving some kind of message. She had to make sure that if anything happened to her, someone would know the truth. Emma had to leave a record of everything she had found. She decided to write down all of the details in a journal. Every date, every flower, every symptom, and every moment of doubt. She wrote everything down. From the first time she noticed something was wrong to the day she found the envelope in the cabinet. She made sure to include the names of the doctors, the name of the florist, and everything about the plants Daniel had been growing. She included photos of the oleander plants, as well as the pictures from the flower shop. Emma wrote it all, making sure it was clear and organized. Once she finished the journal, Emma took one last look around the house. This had been her home for years. It had been a place of love and comfort, or at least, that was what she had believed. But now it felt like a prison, a place where danger lurked in the shadows, and where she couldn't trust the man she had married. The next morning, after Daniel left for work, Emma packed her bag. She carefully placed the journal, the envelope, and the documents into a folder and hid it inside her purse. Then, with everything ready, she left the house. She didn't look back. She couldn't. As she drove away, Emma felt a strange sense of relief. She was free. but she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She still didn't know exactly what Daniel would do when he realized she was gone, or how he would react to her leaving. But one thing was certain. She was no longer going to be his victim. She was going to take control of her own life. Emma had made it out, but the hardest part was still ahead. Emma drove for hours, not entirely sure where she was going. She just needed to get away, to put some distance between herself and Daniel. The house, the flowers, the memories. They were all too much to handle right now. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she had learned, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel would be looking for her soon. He would eventually notice her absence, and when he did, he would know that something was wrong. Emma's heart was heavy as she drove. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and her mind kept going back to all the things Daniel had done over the years. He had manipulated her so skillfully that it took Emma this long to figure out what was happening. Every flower, every illness, every little detail had been part of his plan to hurt her slowly, to break her down without her even realizing it. She thought about calling the police, but she didn't know where to start. What would she say? That her husband had been poisoning her for years with flowers? It sounded unbelievable, even to her. She couldn't imagine what the police would think. Would they take her seriously? Or would they think she was just overreacting? Emma didn't know what to do next. All she knew was that she couldn't go back to the house. Not until she had a better understanding of what Daniel was capable of, and what he would do when he realized she was gone. After a long drive, Emma finally stopped at a small diner on the edge of town. She needed a break, some time to think and figure out her next move. The diner was quiet, with only a few people scattered at tables. She sat down at one of the booths and ordered a cup of coffee. As she waited for her drink, Emma pulled out the journal she had written the night before. She had written everything down, every detail of what she had found, every step of Daniel's plan. As she read through her notes again, Emma felt a sense of clarity. She had gathered enough evidence to know that Daniel had been planning to kill her for years, but she still didn't have enough to prove it. She couldn't just accuse him without any solid proof. But the journal was a start. The flowers, the letters from doctors, the notes from the florist, they all pointed to the same conclusion. Daniel had been poisoning her slowly, and he had been doing it on purpose. The more Emma thought about it, the more she realized how deep Daniel's deception went. He had been working with the doctors, the florist, and possibly even other people to keep her in the dark. Every time she thought something was wrong with her health, he would rush her to the doctor, making it seem like there was nothing serious going on. He had been controlling her life, carefully manipulating her into believing that everything was fine, when in reality, he was the one causing her pain. Emma's mind wandered back to the letters. The one from Dr. Thomas, the toxicologist, was especially disturbing. It made her realize that Daniel had been studying her reactions to the flowers, planning each step carefully. It wasn't just a coincidence that the flowers she had been receiving on their anniversaries made her feel sick. Daniel had been testing different amounts of poison to see how much it would take to harm her without killing her. The idea that he had been doing this for so long sent a chill down her spine. He had been so patient, so calculated. But Emma knew she couldn't let him get away with it. She had to make sure that she exposed him for what he had done. She couldn't let him continue hurting her or anyone else. But how could she prove it? How could she make sure that Daniel would never harm her again? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she needed help. She couldn't do this alone. After finishing her coffee, Emma made a decision. She would call the police, but she wouldn't go to them empty-handed. She would bring all of the evidence she had gathered. The journal, the documents, the photos, and everything else that proved Daniel's guilt. It wasn't just about saving herself anymore. It was about making sure that Daniel was stopped before he could hurt anyone else. Emma's first call was to a detective she had met years ago when she volunteered at a local charity event. His name was Detective Parker, and he had always seemed like a trustworthy person. She had kept his business card all these years, just in case she ever needed help. Now, more than ever, Emma was glad she had it. When Detective Parker answered the phone, Emma explained everything. She told him about the flowers, the poisoning, the doctors, and the florist. She didn't hold anything back. She knew she had to be honest and thorough if she wanted to be taken seriously. She also explained how she had gathered all the evidence and had been keeping a journal of everything that had happened. At first, Detective Parker was quiet, listening carefully to everything she said. When Emma finished, he spoke. "I believe you, Emma. This is serious, and we will do everything we can to help you. But you need to stay safe. You can't go back to your house until we can figure out what to do next. We'll start gathering evidence and putting together a case against your husband. But for now, you need to stay out of sight." Emma nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Finally, someone believed her. Finally, she wasn't alone in this fight. Detective Parker told her to stay in touch and to keep him updated on anything new. He also told her to make sure she stayed somewhere safe, far away from Daniel, until they could take action. After hanging up, Emma sat in the diner, feeling a mixture of emotions. She was scared, but she was also determined. She had come this far, and now she had to keep going. She had taken the first step toward exposing Daniel and making sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. But the road ahead was still uncertain. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew she was doing the right thing. She wasn't going to let him get away with it. Detective Parker began his investigation quietly. He didn't want Daniel to know that Emma had come forward. He wanted to collect as much information as possible before making any move. Parker understood how dangerous people like Daniel could be. Calm on the outside but deeply controlling and cruel underneath. He started by visiting the florist shop where Emma had gone. He asked the owner, Mrs. Jenkins, if she could show him the receipts and records of flower orders Daniel had placed over the years. Mrs. Jenkins was cooperative. She remembered Emma clearly and had always felt something odd about the situation. She showed Parker the receipts. Every year, Daniel had ordered blue orchids, Emma's favorite flower. But Mrs. Jenkins had changed the order every time. She explained that blue orchids, while beautiful, contained a chemical that was dangerous to Emma. and she couldn't live with herself if she delivered something that might harm a customer. Parker asked if she had kept any of the original order notes or voice messages. Mrs. Jenkins nodded and brought out a small box where she had stored Daniel's written notes and voice messages over the years. One of the voice recordings stood out. It was Daniel, saying very clearly, "Just make sure they're blue. She has to get the blue ones." No matter what. The tone of his voice was calm, but there was a coldness in it that made Parker uneasy. He asked Mrs. Jenkins for a copy of the recordings and the handwritten notes. She gave them without hesitation. From there, Detective Parker reached out to Dr. Thomas, the toxicologist. At first, Dr. Thomas was hesitant to speak. He was worried about legal trouble, about breaking doctor-patient rules. But when Parker told him that this was now a criminal investigation and that a woman's life was in danger, the doctor agreed to talk. Dr. Thomas admitted that Daniel had come to him years ago, asking strange questions about small doses of plant-based poisons. Daniel said he was working on a research article. But Dr. Thomas said he had always found the man's interest too specific. Daniel would ask things like, how much of this chemical would make someone feel sick but not kill them? Or, would symptoms look like natural illness? Parker asked if there were any written records or emails. Dr. Thomas handed over a series of emails Daniel had sent him from a private email address, with detailed questions about toxins found in certain flowers. Parker now had more than enough to open an official case. He created a timeline of all the flower orders, the medical symptoms Emma had experienced each year, the doctor visits, and the suspicious emails and recordings. Everything fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Each year, Emma had grown weaker, and Daniel had played the role of the caring husband while slowly poisoning her. But Parker wasn't done. He wanted to know more about Daniel's past. He searched public records, old newspaper articles, and court documents. What he found was shocking. Years ago, Daniel had been engaged to another woman named Laura. Laura had died mysteriously after just a year of marriage. The cause of death was ruled as heart failure, but the symptoms listed in the medical report were almost the same as Emma's: frequent nausea, dizziness, fatigue, and eventually organ failure. At the time, no one had thought to look deeper. Laura's death had seemed natural. Her family had accepted it, and Daniel had moved on quietly. But now, with everything Parker had learned, it was clear that Emma wasn't the first. This discovery changed everything. Parker knew he had to act fast. Daniel was dangerous, and if he suspected Emma was onto him, there was no telling what he might do. He could try to run, or worse, try to find Emma and silence her before the truth came out. Parker contacted his team and arranged for a protection detail to be placed near Emma's safe location without her even knowing. He wanted to make sure she was watched from a distance until they were ready to arrest Daniel. At the same time, Parker got a warrant to search Daniel's home. The team entered the house quietly, while Daniel was away. What they found confirmed everything Emma and Parker feared. In the study behind a locked drawer, they found files, detailed journals, medical charts, and even a list that shocked them all. The list had dates, flower types, dosage amounts, and reactions. It was a complete log of what Daniel had done each year, how much poison was used, how Emma responded, and what the doctors said. There was also a note titled "Final Step." It was dated for the upcoming anniversary. Daniel had written, "This year's dose will be the last. The full amount. No more delays." That meant he had planned to finally finish what he had been doing for 12 years. He was going to give Emma a large dose of poison in the flowers on their next anniversary and make her death look like a natural result of long-term illness. Detective Parker knew they had to act quickly. With the evidence they had now, they could arrest Daniel. But they needed to make sure he didn't suspect anything before they caught him. The element of surprise was important. Parker began planning the arrest operation with his team. It had to be smooth and quiet, with no room for mistakes. Meanwhile, Emma was waiting in a rented cottage far away from her home. She didn't know yet what Parker had discovered. All she could do was wait, hope, and trust that justice was on the way. She had no idea how close she had come to death, or how lucky she was that the florist had made the choice to change the flowers all those years. As Parker reviewed the final pieces of evidence, he knew one thing for sure. Emma's case would not only bring justice to her, but might also help bring the truth to light for Daniel's past crimes. The time to act was now. The day of the arrest finally arrived. Detective Parker and his team had everything ready. They had a detailed plan. They knew where Daniel would be, what time he would leave home, and where he was going. That morning, Daniel was heading to the flower shop, just like he did every year before his anniversary. He was going to pick up the final bouquet, blue orchids, the flowers that he believed would end Emma's life. As Daniel entered the shop, the police were already waiting outside. He didn't know anything. Inside, Mrs. Jenkins greeted him calmly, as always. She handed him a bouquet of blue orchids. He smiled, thinking his plan was almost done. But as he turned to leave, 2 police officers walked in and asked him to stop. He looked confused and tried to act innocent. "Daniel Thompson," one officer said, "you are under arrest for attempted murder and suspected involvement in a previous suspicious death." Daniel tried to speak, but the officers were firm. They read him his rights and placed him in handcuffs. He was taken to the police station where Detective Parker was waiting. Parker showed him the evidence one by one: the florist's receipts, the voice recordings, the emails to the toxicologist, the journals from his home, and the note labeled "Final Step." Daniel stayed silent through most of it, but when he saw the journals, his face changed. He realized he had made a mistake by keeping records. He had been too confident, too sure that no one would ever find out. Meanwhile, Emma was informed that Daniel had been arrested. She felt a mix of fear, sadness, and relief. It was hard to believe the man she had loved and trusted for so many years had been planning to kill her. But now, she was safe. She had been saved just in time. Over the next few weeks, the police continued their investigation. They found more details about Daniel's past. They found old letters, hidden accounts, and even a false identity he had used when he was younger. They also reopened the case of Laura, his first wife. With the new evidence, it was clear that Laura had not died from natural causes. Daniel had poisoned her in the same slow, secret way he had tried with Emma, but back then, no one had suspected him. He had gotten away with it. This time, however, the law caught up with him. During the trial, the courtroom was full. Emma sat quietly, listening as the lawyers presented the case. The jury heard the voice messages, saw the doctor's emails, and read parts of Daniel's journal aloud. The most powerful moment was when the florist, Mrs. Jenkins, stood and explained how she had changed the flowers every year because something in her heart told her it wasn't right to send them. Emma also gave a statement. She spoke about her marriage, her health, and how she had always tried to be a good wife. She said she had ignored the signs for too long, thinking it was just stress or bad luck. But now, she had learned the truth, and she was stronger for it. Daniel showed no emotion during the trial. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. Maybe he thought he was smarter than everyone else, or maybe he didn't care. But the jury didn't need his explanation. They found him guilty on all charges. The judge gave him a life sentence without parole. After the trial, Emma tried to rebuild her life. She moved to a new town, started therapy, and focused on her health. Slowly, her body began to heal. She ate better, slept better, and found peace in small things. Reading, walking in nature, and even growing her own flowers, but never blue orchids. She also stayed in touch with Detective Parker. He had not only solved the case but had believed her when no one else had. Parker told her she was one of the bravest people he had ever met. Emma didn't feel brave most days. She just felt lucky to be alive. But over time, she began to believe that surviving something so dark and dangerous did make her strong. In the end, the story of the wrong anniversary flowers wasn't just a mystery. It was a story about trust, about listening to your instincts, and about the power of truth. Emma learned that even the most beautiful things, like flowers, can hide danger if they come from the wrong hands. But she also learned that one act of kindness, like a florist's small decision, can save a life. Emma's story became known by many. It was shared in newspapers and online. People wrote to her, thanking her for being strong and speaking up. She didn't ask for attention, but her experience helped others see signs in their own lives, signs they may have been ignoring. And so, her pain became someone else's warning, and her strength became someone else's guide. She lived, not just because she was lucky, but because she was brave enough to face the truth and smart enough to act on it. Thank you for listening to The Wrong Anniversary Flowers by Amjad. I hope you enjoyed the story and learned something new today. If you'd like to read the full story again or share it with others, you can download the PDF version of this audiobook for free. Just click the link in the description below and get your copy now. Keep learning, and stay tuned for more stories to improve your English. Happy reading!